Alright, so I saw The Conjuring 2, and I've already seen The Conjuring 1, otherwise I wouldn't be reviewing The Conjuring 2. It wouldn't make any sense for me to review the second one when I haven't seen the first one. But I didn't do a review for the first one because movie reviews are kind of something I do off and on, which I think what I'm going to do is review movies I either really, really liked or really, really hated. Or otherwise, I just have a very strong opinion on said movie. Like, let's take X-Men Apocalypse, for example. I've never really been a big X-Men fan, so I didn't really see the point in doing a review if I didn't really feel involved in the movie. But I have enjoyed X-Men First Class, X-Men Days of Future Past, and I did like Apocalypse, even if it was pretty much the weakest of the three. But I don't think it deserves all the hatred it's gotten. And I'll keep these reviews short and sweet just so I kind of get to the point and I don't dance around things like I did with, Sinister, etc. But anyways, on to The Conjuring 2. For me, it had its moments. It wasn't terrifying per se, but I can tell it tried without being cheap or, well, fucking predictable, as most horror flicks tend to be. There weren't any annoying characters that I could see, and the acting was well done, and you had the main two stars of the first film in it, which is the Warrens, who are basically these, they're not exorcists, they just investigate the paranormal, and they try to get rid of the paranormal if they find it, but they also work for the church, so if they can't find any paranormal activity, or can verify that there is paranormal activity going on, they can't really do anything because if they act upon a false identification, then it kind of looks bad on the church. So it's like they have to be very nitpicky about who they help in terms of representing the church. Now, granted, they're not very, they're not uber religious where they're like, no, we won't help these people because they're not pure. No, they want to help as many people as they possibly can, which is something I like about them. It's not in your face with the whole religion thing. It's just kind of a background aspect. It's just something that these two characters happen to have. And they also have their various background stories in terms of this paranormal stuff, which is what brought them together in the first place, which works, and it's not in your face. I mean, I'm not very religious. In fact, I'm more of a agnostic atheist than anything, but even I was kind of like, I like what they're doing here. So, again, even with, kid characters and stuff like that, no one really annoyed me in any way. And this is set in England as opposed to the first one that was set in more like the American Midwest. But, anyways, as for the demon, and demons, I should say. That's what I was getting at. I don't know why I did the random S sound, but anyways. I think they took a page or two from the Babadook in terms of how they revealed the demon, and just it was CGI, but just the CGI itself, it made me think of the monster in the Babadook. And I wasn't saying, I'm not going to say that they're ripping off of the Babadook, but they're taking a page out of it, and a good page out of it. They're basically almost respecting the work that was done in the Babadook, because the Babadook was a well-done horror film. It was probably one of the better horror films done in the last, decade. And they did it in a clever way, and the way that was is, as I mentioned before, just kind of alluding to, they'll show short, small snippets of the monster itself, but they won't just give you, the full reveal. You'll just see, the face in one scene, or the body in another without the face, or the face without the body, and stuff like that. So it works. It's not revealing too much, and it's not overabundance of exposure. So you're just kind of you still have this sense of kind of terror, even if someone like me isn't necessarily like, oh my god, I won't be able to sleep at night. Oh god, what will I do? It was effective. It worked. And I didn't feel like it was shoving this monster down my throat or overexposing it. Anyways, in terms of the demon, nuns will be renewed in the BDSM scene, along with guys in top hats with hooks. And for those of you that have seen the movie, I hope you know what I'm getting at. But for those of you who don't, you'll get there eventually. Anyways, as I said before, it also had the religious aspects that weren't in your face, and they seem to add to the good guys struggling against the demon bitch from hell's own Sunday school. It's kind of like a power that these two people had to protect the otherwise defenseless, aka the child that was possessed, as well as her family, but it didn't make them seem immune to the danger or the demon itself. In fact, the most tense moments where you're like, oh shit, what's going to happen? Like, the most anxiety came from scenes that involved the couple that was trying to combat the demon, not necessarily the family, which I felt like was a good way to kind of balance out the villain and the main protagonist in this film. So it worked. It kept the anxiety going, and in fact, it felt more anxious than the previous film, which is something that I was surprised by. I was like, like I tend to get on some horror films and even some horror games in terms of like the survivor factor, where when you follow the same character multiple times, let's say, for example, Isaac Clarke in Dead Space, or for the sake of film aspects, we'll say, what's a horror film character I can think of that's like survived repeatedly in a horror film franchise? Off the top, Sydney from the Scream series. She kind of gets used to the whole, a serial killer trying to masquerade as a ghost and killing people. She doesn't really have the scare factor going with her. She's more about, in the first film, yeah, she's terrified. In the second film, she's like, oh, this again. How do I figure this out? How do I figure out who's doing this without losing all of my friends? In the third film, she's like, oh, fuck, it's, admittedly, I didn't see the third film because I didn't care to see the third film because I heard so much negative about it. But you have this survivor aspect where the survivor just kind of gets used to the horror that's going on. But in the case of The Conjuring 2, the horror is far more severe than it was in the first film. So the main characters feel like they just can't handle, or at least one of them feels like they just can't handle what's going on now. And they're like, no, I can't do this anymore. I just can't. I can't. It's just my psyche is not able to handle the fact that we have to do this again. I just can't. But they are put in a situation where they have to, and they're like, I am like about to lose my mind, but I will go ahead and do this. And they do. And that ends, or the big like clash between the protagonist and the demon was probably one of the most anxious moments I've seen in a film for a long time. It was even more anxiety building than pretty much any film I've seen this year, between X-Men Apocalypse and whatever other films I've seen this year. I'm like, admittedly, the films I've seen, it's been off and on, which is why I don't regularly do movie reviews. I kind of leave that to the Jeremy Johns and Schmoes No type of guys. I feel like they kind of hit the plate when it comes to my views. So when it comes to reviews, they kind of get it. They more or less echo my opinions. Admittedly, there are bits and bobs where I disagree with them, but for the most part, I tend to be on the same page as them when it comes to how they feel about movies. Although I do feel like Jeremy Johns is a bit more forgiving, while at the same time leans a little too into his fanboyism, whereas Schmoes No can be a little bit harsher, a little bit more critical, but at the same time, they don't have that fanboyism that kind of gets in the way. So it's, I'm not discrediting either one of them. They both more or less give genuine opinions that I'm like, yeah, you know what? I get where you're coming from. I understand why you feel that way. I'm not trying to harp on them or get onto them for anything. It's just every critic of anything is going to have a natural bias no matter what. They always will have a natural bias. Such as, like, for me, for example, when I see the Warcraft movie, which I plan on seeing that tomorrow, and I will have a review of that up, I'm probably going to be a bit biased in favor of the movie because I'm a big fan of the Warcraft series. But for somebody who's just now stepping in saying, oh, okay, Warcraft is a film, yeah, let me see if it's worth checking out. From what I've seen, you probably won't get the best introduction into the series. So it's almost like a film made for fans, but I'll get into that later. Anyways, that being said, in regards to the film that I saw, which is Conjuring 2, it's rare that a movie or a horror movie outdoes its predecessor, although that could be said for just about any movie in general. But here we are, and here it did. I liked The Conjuring 2. It kept itself suspenseful. It didn't really, the pacing was well done, the acting was well done. Even with the child actors, it was well done. With they weren't like in the movie too much. They were in it just enough for me to be like, I can relate to them and I can distinguish them. I know who's who. And even with the other various characters, I understood who was who and what they were doing. I kind of got where each one was coming from. And the monster did its job well. The horror was there. And what a lot of films tend to miss when they're trying to be scary is horror isn't jump scare after jump scare after jump scare. It's atmosphere. It's how I feel while I'm watching the movie. And this one nailed it. It didn't overexpose the monster. It didn't underexpose the monster. It didn't overuse jump scares. It didn't underuse jump scares, because jump scares do have their place in a movie. And this one it had like that perfect balance, which just goes to show that James Wan knows what the fuck he's doing when it comes to these films. And if they do a Conjuring 3, I hope James Wan is around to do the film, or to direct the film. Because if he's not involved, I'm not certain. But at the same time, I wouldn't mind like an upcoming director to get involved and showcase their criteria and their ability when it comes to horror films. I would not mind a new face in this. I just don't want somebody that's been previously established as being, there when it comes to horror filmmaking, and I don't want Hollywood just looking to cash in a new check for their next and latest, greatest haunted movie or Paranormal Activity movie, which thank God that series is done, because Paranormal Activity was drilled into the fucking ground. But if I had to give this a score, I would say I'd give it roughly an 8 out of 10. For a horror movie, it was surprisingly well done. I was very impressed. The acting was great. The direction was great. The camera work was great. The script was really well done. I have literally next to no gripes. I mean, I give it an 8 out of 10. It wasn't the perfect horror movie, but it was a very, very fucking good horror movie. It was probably one of the best horror movies I've seen in a couple of years, if I'm being honest. I mean, I think as far back as Cabin in the Woods, that may have been the last, as good as this was horror movie, but at the same time, I kind of have a selective memory, so I'm not entirely sure if there's been a horror movie in between. Oh yeah, The Babadook, the one that I referenced in this film. That was a fucking great film. I would actually give that one a 9 out of 10. If I'm being honest, The Babadook was damn near perfect. I don't remember what gripes I had, or if I had any. I think at best I could just come up with nitpicks, but yeah, I mean, that was a great fucking film. So if this one's borrowing from that, yeah, then I understand exactly why it did well. But from start to finish, this film was great. It didn't miss a step. It was as good as it could have been, and it was in some other ways better. So I give it a certified pass, and then some. So that being said, folks, no spoilers here. I didn't spoil it. I don't think I spoiled it, at least according to my little cliff notes here. I didn't spoil anything. So with that being said, folks, if you are unsure about seeing The Conjuring 2, and you've seen the first Conjuring, and you're like, oh, The Conjuring 2, it's probably going to be like, another cash-in sequel for a horror franchise, and it's probably going to suck because most Paranormal Activity movies suck, which isn't entirely false, but if you like the first Conjuring, and if you do like horror movies, this is definitely a film for you. So with that being said, folks, I'm Luke Blight, and I shall see you all in whatever video I upload next. Have a good night, and have a safe night. Even though this is probably going to be uploaded at 4 in the morning. Either way, folks, see you all next time.